Okay, I'm so excited because I'm here with Princess. We are today talking about what it's like being an expat on the continent of Africa. I'm an expat, but I live in France. She is here living in Africa, in Ethiopia. And I'm just so curious about what that experience is like. I'm coming here for the first time. I had so many expectations about like being in Africa, being in the motherland for the first time. And I'm wondering what reality is actually like.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. First of all, I am Princess. Happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much for the invitation, for the interview. And yeah, here we are on the motherland, in Ethiopia specifically. And when I first got here, I actually came with no expectations.
That's good. I
I
learned my
was
lesson.
I was completely open-minded and just it is what it is, and I'll get there and I'll see it. So I didn't have a whole lot of culture shock when I arrived. However, as an American, specifically a Black American, when I got here, I did feel a sense of connection. I did feel like, wow, my feet are on the soil in Africa. It did feel like I have arrived home. I
Oh
did have
wow.
that feeling.
Oh wow.
I
I'm
didn't, you
jealous.
know, I didn't
I am.
expect, maybe because I didn't come with expectations,
That I'm
because
telling you, don't I came with that expectation. I was like, I'm arriving in the motherland. I'm gonna feel like and like as soon as I landed, people were like, oh, that's a foreigner.
mm,
It's hard to feel like you're home when you get singled out as a foreigner all day, every day.
okay. Yeah. So that I didn't. Well, I came with the Peace Corps. So
Okay.
I came as a United States Peace Corps volunteer, and I was actually there were white volunteers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So being black, they stood out more than me.
Right, right, right.
They
Okay.
pointed at them as a foreigner, and I felt accepted. I felt welcomed here. And again, this is 2011. This is 14 years ago when I arrived in Ethiopia for the first time.
Yeah,
Um,
right now she's basically Ethiopian. Like she's an expat, she's American, but like her husband's Ethiopian, her kids are Ethiopian.
Yeah, exactly. So
It's like
basically, I'm now an Ethiopian. But even at that time, I just felt like I could even see a difference in the way that the locals treated us as Black Americans versus the white Americans.
okay, so you felt
Um,
more brought in to the
yeah.
culture.
And even, yes, I did initially. And even outside of that, I did just feel a connection within myself. Like, just, I don't know, the spiritual connection to the
Hmm.
land. Like, and I remember, I specifically remember thinking, like, wow, I am in Africa. Like,
Now,
I was in awe.
at what point did you feel that? Like when you said you felt this connection to the land, and you felt like was that day one, or this is like after a month or two?
So, no, this was like immediately.
Okay,
So,
wow.
when we arrived, it was nighttime, actually. So I couldn't really see too much. But then we got to the hotel. Everybody was tired, jet lagged, slept. The next morning, when the sun is out, I can see my surroundings. And at that point, like literally day one, I was like, wow, I'm in Africa. I'm home. Like,
Okay.
probably the thing that our ancestors dreamed about, returning.
Hmm.
And here I am. So, yeah, that was my first interaction as
Okay,
an
that's
American.
amazing. And so now, why did you choose to keep coming back? You had an initial, no, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? You had an initial first experience with the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Many people come to Africa and they bounce. They go back to the U.S.
True.
So I guess what brought you back?
So during my Peace Corps experience, I actually met my husband.
Oh, that's what brought it back.
Yeah, who, as you mentioned, is an Ethiopian. So I met him during my service in the rural area, and he was also assigned to the town that I was in for work. Um, he wasn't from there, so we were both just there working, and actually ended up in the same compound that he was living in. So for those of you who don't know, a compound is basically a a small gated community or walled community that several people might live in, or it could just be one single house with a yard or something like that. But ours had several units in it, and so we were both in separate units in the same compound, renting.
Okay, wow.
So that's the the long short of it of how I met my husband. But so yeah, that is what kept me coming back. Him being Ethiopian, but also just it was in me.
Hmm.
I literally so there are challenges in Ethiopia which we may get into later, but that might make you feel like it's not comfortable. I want to go back to what I know.
Well, let's dive in.
What is
what are the
comfortable.
challenges? I've had challenges,
Yeah.
but I'm curious what your perspective is of what some of the challenges are for people.
Okay, so before I get to that, and also why I didn't want to leave. By the time I made it through the end of my service, I was bawling at the airport. I was crying so hard, like I didn't want to leave. I grew to love Ethiopia.
I cried when I left India.
Yeah, so it happens. But the challenges. So I was assigned as a Peace Corps volunteer in the rural area, and there are more challenges than you could imagine, like especially compared to living in a city. So
Getting water?
Yeah, getting water, electricity going out. I feel like I could blend in a little bit more in the rural area.
More than in Addis?
More than in Addis, yeah.
Why?
Especially at that time, I don't think people had much access to the rest of the world, to the internet,
So just, you mean when people visually saw you?
Yeah, it's like,
you stood out more.
In the rural area? No, I don't think I stood out more.
No, but I mean in Addis, you think that you stood out?
No.
Okay.
I think at that time I didn't have much of a command of the language. Well, stood out in some ways, yes. So when I spoke, it was like very clear, like, okay, she's not Ethiopian. But then also, I think maybe if we don't like look physically different, there is something about us that is different, you know?
Because I think even walking down the street, for sure, like whether it's my shoes or my
your style,
hair, for
hair,
sure,
everything,
like the whole thing, like they know, they know. So that's why I'm curious, because by the way, Ethiopians, one thing I've noticed here is that, I think I had a really stereotypical image of what Ethiopians look like. But when you're here, there's a whole range of what Ethiopians look like, you know?
They look like me and you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've seen Ethiopians that look like they're from India, and various parts of India. I've seen Ethiopians that look like they're from northern India, southern India. And, I've spent a lot of time in India, so I know. But I've seen people that look stereotypically Ethiopian and not, anyway, they're all here.
Right.
So I'm curious, that's what I was curious about, like, could they spot you right away, right? But I think there is something about us that
is different,
American, even if it's not just our facial features.
Right, that's true. Absolutely. The challenges were also part of assimilating into the culture as well, learning the language, outside of the water and electricity issues. Also, when I was alone in my town, like there weren't any other volunteers, like things were fine. But sometimes when I was with another volunteer who was a white volunteer, sometimes they would get preferential treatment.
Oh,
and that's
hard.
That's hard. That's hard to accept when you feel like these are my people. Like, I'm home. I'm here with them. These are my brothers and sisters. And why would they treat that person better than me?
But how would it manifest when you say they're getting preferential treatment? Is it like they get Gersha? Or
no.
Like, what are they getting that's different?
If they know that we're both American, there's no difference. But one time, so I was traveling with another white volunteer. We were taking local transport. We were using buses. And because of just, I guess, being Black, they assumed that I was Ethiopian. So the bus was kind of full, but there were still some seats available in the front. Or they made room. So they were telling her, go ahead, go sit down. They actually made somebody get up and move to a different seat and let her sit. And I was trying to come with her. And they, like, held me back. Like... And they're like, oh, no, like only her, like you have to wait for the next one. And then, the white volunteer was like, no, she's my friend. We're traveling together. Oh, okay. Sorry. So go ahead. And it was like, that is not right.
Yeah.
There's no reason for you to treat this person any different than your brother and sister,
And, actually, I've seen that on certain, like, Google Maps reviews, where I'm looking at restaurant reviews, and where some Ethiopians said they thought they weren't treated well at restaurants where foreigners were getting some preferential treatment.
It happens to Ethiopians, too.
Places. Yeah, so it happens to Ethiopians, too.
It does happen to them, and that's what I was going to bring up about looking different, too, because sometimes, so my husband is Ethiopian. He is, like, stereotypical Ethiopian, like the way he looks. But even him, when he comes here, sometimes they'll think he's from somewhere else. And I think it's because he's been out of the country for so long. And maybe the way he carries himself or the way he dresses, like they'll even assume that he's from somewhere else, or that, or they'll automatically pinpoint that he's diaspora,
It's your Americanness rubbing off
I
on
guess
him a little
so.
bit.
Like maybe. It's crazy, yeah.
Now I wonder, you are in Addis now, not in the rural towns. Like, is there an expat community here? Are people sort of connected? Oh,
No,
okay.
mm-mm. That doesn't exist here the way that you may have seen in other people's channels throughout the world. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, not yet, at
Not
least.
yet.
I think there are expats here,
Mm-hmm.
but there isn't an expat community, and I think it's because maybe we're not large in number, or maybe we don't
Yeah.
know that we're here.
Yeah, I was wondering because, like, I joined an expat group just to see if I could link up with people or connect, and it's like maybe it's like mainly a group for like selling stuff.
Yeah,
It's not like really a
yeah.
group for connecting with people, which is different than like you go to Thailand. Oh, there's a community. There's so many
Wow.
communities of Black people, and even in Mexico, I know there's a bunch of communities of not just Black expats in general, but also Black expats. But so I was
I'm gonna
curious
eat
about
if you
that
don't
here.
mind.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
get a bite of food to eat. But so yeah, that's interesting, and
yeah.
I wonder if it will change. I don't feel like Addis is necessarily the most tourist friendly, the most welcoming. I mean, this is
Why'd
my
you say
first.
that?
Well, I was gonna say this is my first country in Africa, so I think I have to compare it more. But I think just little infrastructure things, like for getting around, right? You have to take a taxi. You
Yeah.
can't. You
Oh,
don't necessarily want to use. If I'm comparing it to somewhere like Thailand, you can take the subway or sky trains and get all around,
yeah.
so it's easier, right? Little things are easier, and
Mm-hmm.
then when you travel that way, that's also how locals travel. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not something that sets you apart. Like when you're here, I think as an expat, maybe I would move differently than a local, just because like I've seen the local buses. For me, they don't look like I would really need to speak the language
Yeah.
to
Mm-hmm.
be able to navigate that. I don't speak the
Yes.
language, so I can't ever take a local bus.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't travel the way a local would travel. So I'm
Right.
just saying. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just little things are different.
That makes sense.
And then I'm not sure how. I feel like prices here are interesting because it's not like that cheap to live here,
Oh no, it's
but you
not.
don't necessarily get as many amenities as you could get for that price somewhere else.
Okay, so I think Addis, maybe Ethiopia as a whole, is generally relatively cheaper than America.
Sure.
But are you saying it's not cheaper than other countries you've been in?
I'm saying, yeah, like if I
It's
think
not.
about living abroad and in my imagination,
Yeah.
which is not reality,
Mm-hmm.
in my imagination, living in Addis would be cheaper than it is. For example, to give a reference,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen apartments going for 1,500 USD per month
Yes. Mm-hmm.
if you want to live in a nice area. In my imagination, that's higher than
Yeah.
I'd be paying.
It
Like I
is
could pay
expensive.
1,500 and find something. I mean, not something good, but I could find something, in LA.
Uh
Maybe
huh.
not anymore. I don't know. I haven't been there in a while.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying. So like it's different, and so I'm curious to see. This is my first,
Mm-hmm.
African expat experience, which is not first African tourist experience. So I'm just curious to see how it is in other countries, and
Yeah.
to see if maybe.
So, to that point, rent is expensive. However, I don't know if you've gone and bought food or how much you've been out, like maybe shopping or something. But
Bought food, got food poisoning. Yes.
oh no. Okay, well, anyways,
But yes,
depends where you eat, but I think food here is actually cheap.
agreed.
Yeah, food
Agreed.
is not expensive.
Agreed.
The most expensive things here are rent, land, and like housing. If you're gonna purchase a house.
Yeah. Food is, I mean, rent is expensive, but food you can eat for anywhere from $2 to $10, depending on how certain you want to be you don't get sick.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
But the two is, but I made a mistake. I had some uncooked food, which was just,
Or raw meat.
not raw meat. I had some salad. I
Okay.
love a salad, and it was an expensive salad too, so I thought I was safe,
Oh.
right? But it didn't work out.
Oh.
But I think it's cool to hear, but like you are so well integrated now,
Oh.
and it seems like by the way, you definitely need to check out her YouTube channel. You can find more
Please.
about her life and experiences, but like you seem really well integrated into Ethiopia now, or maybe you don't even need the expat community in that way because you're so
Yeah.
in it.
I would say that's true. I don't think I need an expat community, but I would like one
Yeah.
because even though I'm integrated into the community and can get by with the language, like there's still differences,
Mhm.
and connecting with people who have had similar experiences as you is important.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'm actually still trying to find my community in France.
Okay.
So like I totally get it. And
Yeah.
people are there, but it's hard to sometimes connect and with the right people at the right times and all those things.
Yeah, sure.
So definitely follow her, check out her channel. More expat stuff is coming up for me, possibly here in Ethiopia. I don't know. I'm always doing something. So if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? And there's more to come.
Bye.
Bye.